call for this conference and to represent my, to say also my gratitude to Dr. Data. I will present a paper on employee engagement and ethical leadership under a crisis perspective. Here it regards a case study which has taken place in Greece. Can you see the change of the slides, please, just to confirm?
Yes, we can.
We know that there are many studies which have focused on issues regarding attitudes such as employee engagement, job fit, affective commitment, psychological climate, and ethical leadership from an HRM lens, actually, highlighting the involvement, the importance of all these attitudes regarding the organizational performance, how organizational performance is increased, and which are the benefits of this. So although there are many studies on job fit, employee engagement, affective commitment, psychological climate, however, these studies examine these attitudes from an HRM perspective and not from a crisis management perspective. So in this study, I try to combine both, trying to see to what extent these attitudes are important in a crisis, stressful period of time. And this study tries to fill exactly this gap, to see the importance of these variables, factors in under a crisis situation. In the importance of this research is because under a crisis situation, we know that these stressful and uncertain situations decrease employees' performance, affect their job satisfaction, the way employees feel towards the organization, and also leadership is affected on the basis of leadership tries to focus on how they can address this stressful situation, where often they don't pay attention to how internally this uncertainty and new problematic situation can be addressed, making sure that employees are engaged, they feel satisfied with what is decided, what takes place. We know that during a stressful situation, a crisis period, there is an overall decline of levels of engagement, and especially in Greece with the financial crisis. And people in this crisis situation, and in any crisis situation, are invited to deal with an uncertain situation with limited resources and very often limited directions that they get from their leaders. The research case study, in this case, as I mentioned, is the Greek society, which is affected by an ongoing financial crisis, and employees have faced dramatic changes in their works, their salaries, the culture, the psychological climate all over, and work-related attitudes such as employee engagement, job fit, affective commitment, psychological climate, and ethical leadership are affected. And considering that research has shown that employee engagement relates to all these attitudes, this research tries to examine the importance, how crises influence these attitudes. I will run quickly the literature review in order to go to methodology. So we know that literature needs further evidence regarding the importance of employee engagements on crisis management effectiveness. And according to Gonzalez and Guerrero and Pratt, employee engagement and ethical leadership play a very important role in all phases of crisis management, because the diagnosis of the impending trouble or danger, or the planning of the appropriate turnaround strategy, or the implementation of the change process and its monitoring, all these are defined by leaders. So employee engagement and ethical leadership are very interconnected and important factors for the identification and implementation of the crisis phases, how each phase has to be addressed, the crisis processes, which are the right ones, and the organizational restructuring. The research purpose is to explore this, as I mentioned, affected from crisis, employee engagement, investigating the relation with person, organization, fit, effective commitment, psychological climate, and ethical leadership during a crisis, economic crisis. And the second main purpose of this research is to bridge the HRM and crisis management perspective. We know the literature about what is, regards employee engagement. I focus on these variables here: the meaningfulness, the feeling that one's work is worthwhile, along with a sense of value in accomplishments at work. The second factor is the safety, the ability to be one's preferred self without fearing negative consequences to self-image, and the availability, having the physical, emotional, and psychological resources necessary for the completion of the work. And research shows that the job fit, effective commitment, and employee perception of psychological climate and ethical leadership reflect Kant's underlying, as I mentioned above, conditions as antecedents of engagement. We know from research the interconnection of all these variables, let's say, the effective commitment, which has been proved that has strong relationship to employee engagement, and it regards the employee's affective bond with the organization, and it is suggested that affective commitment promotes emotional connection with the organization. We know the importance of ethical leadership, where ethical leadership behavior, ethical managerial leadership affects employees' perceptions of ethical climate, which in turn will positively influence people's job satisfaction and effective commitment. That employees' perception of ethical leadership has always positive impact on employee engagement. And ethical leadership, we should not forget that it is a value-driven form of leadership that affects the self-concept and beliefs of followers. And of course, leaders, by acting ethically as role models, articulate and transfer ideals to followers. In terms of the engagement, when organizations develop engagement, have the potential to significantly obtain important benefits. And we know that organizations need engaged employees, and they are looking for ways to develop this engagement in their workforce. And organizations, we know that with high levels of employee engagement, report positive outcomes in terms of performance outcomes. Let's move to the methodology. Here we had a survey of a sample of 204 employees in private sector companies in Greece, where 45.1% were men, 54.9% women, 75% full-time employees, and 25% part-time employees. 59.8% less than 5 years in current jobs. So almost 50% are employees who have many, many years in the job. And we did this survey online, where a questionnaire was distributed through the Google Drive and was presented to people for was allowed people to answer these many days, about 10 days. The instrumentation that was used in order this questionnaire to be developed was the modified meaningfulness scale, the modified safety scale, the modified availability scale, the modified psychological climate measure, the person organization fit scale, the effective commitment scale, and ethical leadership questionnaire, which are synthesized in a measure with the correlation between the research job-related attitudes during the Greek economic crisis. And the reliability was achieved with the use of internal consistency using the Cronbach alpha, and statistics show that 0.946 alpha was obtained from the questions that were delivered. So employee engagement is measured by combining the modified meaningfulness scale, modified safety, and modified availability scale. And the above scales, as well as the modified psychological climate measure, person organization fit scale, affective commitment scale, are scored using a 5-point Likert scale on the basis of strongly agreed, strongly disagree. And the ethical leadership questionnaire is scored using 6-point Likert scale, again, with the strongly agree, strongly disagree. Supportive
Excuse me, doctor.
management, yes.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry to interrupt you. We are
Yes.
Looking at the clock here. We've got about 3 minutes left
Yes.
for presentation.
Yes. So I'm having here the instrumentation overview, as I mentioned, and the results in terms of every factor: employee engagement, affective commitment, psychological climate, and ethical leadership. And the results from the descriptive statistics show that employee engagement regarding the first factor, meaningfulness, 60% do not find that the work they do on this job is important for them. Safety, 40% don't feel physically safe. And then in terms of the availability, over 40% do not feel mentally and emotionally absorbed in their job when working. In terms of the job fit parameter, over 50% feel that their values don't match or fit the organization. Affective commitment factor, over 50% feel that they don't belong to the organization. In terms of the psychological climate, the supportive management factor, almost 55% believe that their manager is not supportive. In terms of the contribution, more than 40% believe that the work they do is not valuable. In terms of the recognition factor, more than 40% believe that their supervisors then do not appreciate the way they do their job. And in terms of the challenge, more than 40% believe that their job is not challenging. In terms of the ethical leadership factor, almost 45% believe that their boss is not fair and objective when evaluating their performance. In terms of the inferential statistics, all hypotheses are confirmed and results suggest medium to standard correlations between the examining factors. So affected from crisis employee engagement, psychological climate, affected from crisis employee engagement and affective commitment. So in terms of all the factors, everything is presented here. So in terms of the conclusion, it shows that no matter if we have a crisis and stressful situations appear for managers to be these stressful situations to be addressed, it is very important managers and leaders to attribute huge importance to job fit, affective commitment, employee satisfaction, and above all, to apply ethical leadership, and in order to be created the appropriate psychological climate which can be supportive, even more supportive during a stressful situation. And this helps recommendations to be considered on the basis of HRM managers should not just apply HRM policies, what should be done, but also consider basic crisis management approaches, which are the risks when just people have to perform, are asked to perform in a stressful and threatening, unknown very often situation, but how the HRM can consider crisis management principles and the importance of the need of establishment of a theoretical framework which incorporates the perspective into the crisis management theory as well. So HRM to consider crisis management approach, but also crisis management theories to consider the HRM approach when these frameworks are applied in practice. In terms of the limitation for this study, it was a small sample size, as I mentioned, 204 people, but typical in organizational research. The statistical methods chosen for the analysis are not informative, but causality relation among the study variables. And it was some kind of self-reported measures and analysis. Some indicative references. This is the end of the presentation. Thank you.